then we came to the Science and Sanity days. Interestingly enough, he had very damn little to say about, you might say, personal activities and so on after the publication of Science and Sanity. At least in the seminars. I don't know what the hell.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about his communications and correspondence with some of the other leading intellectuals at the time?
Well, I can only say that the important material supposedly got reprinted in collected papers. He had personal communications that he instructed his personal secretary to burn upon his death, which undoubtedly she did. So I wouldn't have anything to say about that.
Well, you mentioned the anecdote about about meeting Napoleon and Julius Caesar. Were there any other anecdotes or stories or examples that he seemed to like and used on a regular basis?
Sure, he had lots of them. Mm-hmm. For example, he, well, no. What interest do you guys have about Korzybski? I think Korzybski. Shaking his glove in the face of a lion, the lion whirls around and pees on him or something, I don't know, in a zoo, you know, but he told about a lot of his own interesting experiences between World War I and or between the time that he grew up and then eventually came to the United States. Mm-hmm. But you see, he had this huge problem of moving a cannon in on the Eastern Front, but the Eastern Front of Russia, and he got ruined inside, and apparently he broke up some of his bones and his pelvic area and so on. And so this put a serious damper on his previously very frisky, athletic life. So that's why they sent him to the United States as an observer, and he became a war bond salesman and so on, because he had become so injured in World War I that he could no longer hack it on the front lines.
And he didn't speak English before he came over here?
Oh, who said that?
I heard he didn't learn English until he was 40 or something.
Well, I don't know about the 40, but maybe. But no, he always claimed that he learned English from a Scotch actress. And he had some Scotch intonations that always amused me. For example, particularly in recent years, considering the title of one of my books that a lot of people would like to forget, and the hell with them, he would speak of squarity real. He did a beautiful thing, squarity real. But no, he spoke with a kind of a burr in a sense. But you know, you got burrs also in Russian and German, which he also spoke from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Although I must say, some of his students, I married one of them, could hardly understand word one that he said in his seminar. But then she didn't have that good an ear, I guess.
What about his, didn't he have like private sessions with each of the students throughout the course of the seminar? Or counseling sessions? I don't know how they were.
In a sense, he asked if anyone wished that they should write their biography and to bring it with their copy of Science and Sanity, and if they wished, he would sign it. The book, not the... And if people wished, he would comment on their biography. Some idiots thought that this amounted to his trying to psychoanalyze people. Well, now, I don't know. Maybe he did. I know nothing about that. But he sure as hell never indicated anything other than a willingness to assist or counsel students from the time I saw him in 47.
What about, were you ever exposed to any of his, or did you ever talk about his social life or life away from the Institute at all? Do you have a sense of what he... He
had no social life apart from the Institute when I knew him. Certainly not in 49 when I lived there. He enjoyed the music of Wagner, particularly Tannhäuser, as I recall it. And we have to recall that he gave 2 seminars a year at that point. One at Christmas time, because so many teachers and so on, you know, had Christmas off, and in the summer. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Steve, it seems amazing what he did. For 1 week, he would lecture for approximately 9 hours a day. 3 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon, 3 hours at night. For a week. And having done a little bit of that myself, I know that that amounts to a hell of a task. In the meantime, of course, he not only worked on papers of his own, but he also read material sent to him, particularly his last few weeks, that when I knew him, his last few weeks of life, he worried about the galley proofs of a book published by, or about to get published by, Anatole Rappaport, called Science and the Goals of Man, which included the interesting comment that I used myself subsequently as an exam question, man is a time-binding animal. Well, Korzybski said to me, time and again, in those last few days, he said, you see here this man who has such promise for contributions he could make to the field of general semantics, considering his background, his intelligence, blah, blah, blah. Doing damage to everything that I tried to present. Man is a time-binding animal. So,
well, in general, did you get the sense that he was pleased with his students in terms of, to whatever degree they were able to manifest or exhibit general semantics as he taught me? Did he get a sense that he had been successful in his teaching?
I can't answer that. I know that, of course, he applauded and approved the tremendous contributions made by Irving Lee, Douglas Kelly, and the great Wendell Johnson, and so on. But Sam Bois, I don't know if he ever really, I don't know to what extent he really meshed with Sam, but and Bontrager and so on. But he felt, you know, so happy about that. But he did not seem like a happy guy in general. And I feel sure that he felt that, as who doesn't, that, God, if only I'd done a little better, you know?
Do you have a sense of what he was preparing to do or wanting to do at the time of his death?
No. Well, I know what he tried to do at the time of his death, if that answers your question. He tried to write a better paper on this contribution to a book by Blake. On the paper had the name something like Language and Perception and so on. And he felt unhappy about what he did at that time, because I apologize one and all, but I gotta tell you now that in my opinion, he felt unhappy because he did Model 2 instead of and he couldn't get to Model 4. From a non-Aristotelian point of view. I think that, well, he went to New York City with Charlotte so that he could get out from the craziness of daily activities, not all that much, at the Institute, to work on that paper. And he worked and worked on it. But he couldn't get beyond Model 2. What I've called Model 2. Had it come to him, I think that Seos, Model 4, would have provided him with what he wanted that he didn't quite reach.
So how were you notified about his death?
Well, I told Charlotte that he had collapsed, and she told me he died.
Oh, what were the circumstances?
Well, I'd rather not go into that.
Oh, okay.
But I went over to the hospital with her subsequently.
One of the others has referred to those times, and this is somebody who went through back in the 38, 39 time period. But he referred to it as he remembered it as being very companionable times. I don't know if companionable is a word or not, but he was looking at it very favorably and fondly. Was it your sense, was that fostered more by Korzybski, or was it the result of maybe the other students and the general atmosphere, or would you even use a word like that to describe your experiences in the seminars?
Korzybski published Science and Insanity in 1933. They had the first American Congress on General Semantics in 1935. Can you imagine that? Hansel Ball organized it. 1935, my God, 2 years later. Then, through the work of Kindig and others, but mainly Kindig, they organized the Institute in 1938. They had the Second American Congress in 1941, I believe, a little before my time. And surely Korzybski felt great happiness over the way his work had affected so many people's lives so very positively. Then came World War II. To a certain extent, through Kelly, he also had a tremendous impact on people with problems at the front. But the great growth that undoubtedly he had perceived in the earlier years had fallen off. And I don't know. It may have affected, it must have affected the way he felt at that time, by the time I got there. Because no more chummy socializing nonsense. By the time I saw him, although, you know, they go on and on, the warmth, the human, all that stuff. But yes, but still, basically, I feel sure that he felt concerned over how a leveling off had occurred